Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and earlier today, day 2 of Aberrus raid testing concluded, and with it came a handful of buffs and a few nerfs to Affliction. Buffs to Destro and Demo, nerfs to Affliction, which tonight we will be discussing. Now, these changes hit right after testing had concluded, and realistically, the AF nerfs were expected. They aren't incredibly massive, but it should knock AF down to being in a state that's, much closer to where Destro and Demo are at, depending on the fight and things like that. Toolkits obviously vary, but looking at how AF have been performing in day 1 and day 2 of testing, it's not really unexpected, right? The AF you saw in Aberrus was the AF you're going to be getting when patch 10.0.7 went live, which is in a few days. So these changes I would assume will be in PTR in next week's build. These changes, they said, will indeed be live in a part of patch 10.0.7, which is hitting retail in a few days. So tonight's video, we'll be discussing all of that. WeakAura add-on links, I'll leave for free for you guys down below, Twitch and Discord down there, where they all are for you guys. And as usual, quick shout out to my patrons for you so far in the video. Guys, thank you for all supporting Patreon. As always, a million times. Really appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, link up here, as well as down below. I should mention as well that the 10.1 Warlock PTR spreadsheet will indeed be going live in a week and a half or so, roughly, on Patreon for the Tier 3 Felguard rank or higher. Gets early access to that if you're interested. And yeah, so with that being said, let's jump into the video. All right, so getting into the Warlock changes, buffs, nerfs, all that from today. Off the bat, before we get into the AF nerfs, I want to say that Demonic Inspiration is currently bugged. I, as well as everybody else, have been playing it, I assume, in all testing. So it does not currently give your pet a 5% attack speed increase. So I am sitting at 26% haste here. If I talent into this, bullet point here and put it in there, watch my character's haste. Right about now. Demonic Inspiration is giving basically a 6.5% haste increase to you, the player, whenever you talent into it. So keep that in mind. That works for Destro, Demo, and AF. It's universally a bug for every spec. So Warlock has more haste than basically everybody else. So it's getting extra value. So it's inflating Destro numbers, Demo numbers, and AF numbers all alike. It'll be fixed at some point. I heard it's a rumor that this is actually not working for your pet, but who knows? It'll be fixed at some point. So keep that in mind. We're looking at Destro, Demo, and AF logs and buffs and nerfs and all that stuff here, right? So anyways, getting into the nerfs. So we have, for Affliction, number 1, Dark Virtuosity has been nerfed. It now increases the damage of Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul by 5 and 10% at rank 1 and 2 out of 2. Was 15 and 30. So about a 66% nerf, excuse me, to Dark Virtuosity. But honestly, it's not like the end of the world. Some abilities need to be hit as far as, tuning is concerned for AF, and I think this is a fine one to hit. Looking at Drain Soul's overall damage breakdown on our kill from 2 days ago, this is my kill, 3 minutes, whatever. It was about 14% of my damage, which is not incredibly high, but Drain Soul's been anywhere from like 7 to, I guess, 14 over the course of the expansion. It's gotten a handful of buffs here and there, and I mean, it's fine. It'll shave a bit off here. It's not a 2/3% nerf to this whole this raw amount here. It's not going from 14 to 5 or whatever. It's basically, I would assume it loses like 1.5, 2-ish% here, probably maybe even less than that in overall contribution. So not terrible. Nerf's a nerf. It'll help sort of equalize or bring down AF a bit in comparison to Destro and Demo. So there's that. You also have Sargeras Technique over here buffing Drain Soul as well. So this is a new talent, and this is also a new talent heading into patch 10.0.7/.1. And the other change here we have is to this new ability here as well, Kindled Malice. So Kindled Malice now increases the damage of Malefic Rapture and Seed of Corruption by 4% and 8%. Was 8 and 15. So basically a 50% nerf. Not incredibly surprised here either. Rapture this does sort of impact a little bit the value of having Soul Rot in your talent tree, depending on what build you're playing. It's still good having the extra dot application and things like that, but a Rapture nerf will indeed affect that a little bit. Chances are high, Soul Rot's still pretty good for you and all that due to the Dark Lair rework and things, but sort of expected. Seed is still doing fine damage. There wasn't really the issue here. It's more Rapture damage in single target and 2 targets, so these are both expected. Keep in mind, AF does indeed have the extra 6% haste bug currently as well, which is benefiting it even more. So if you look at raid testing, Rapture is doing currently about 24%, Drain Soul being about 14%. I'm not really surprised AF's getting hit. It has been relatively dominant over the course of testing. We got PI here. It was a pretty good pull. It has been relatively dominant over the course of testing, whether you're looking at yesterday or today. It's been a lot of AF stuff, right? Now, this is not going to be a nerf that brings us down to Warrior Boomkin level or anything at this point, right? but it'll bring us a bit more down to the level of, it's closer to the level of other classes. It's not unexpected. I assumed it would happen. It's okay. Not the end of the world. This raid is still, I think the 4 bosses we tested, 3 of them have been pretty good AF fights. 3 of them have been basically patchwork fights, and one's been a very good Destro Cleave fight. So there's that. Not too worried about it. Tuning happens. It's better to happen earlier than later, in a sense. So these changes will indeed be in 10.0.7 whenever it hits on Tuesday, and will be in 10.1 next week, I assume, on PTR. Moving on from there, the next spec is Demonology. Demo's gotten a handful of buffs today, which is a bit interesting. Demo is still behind Affliction and Destruction by about 15 to 20,000 DPS in single target. It's behind by a large amount, but the damage profile that it brings is very competitive in a lot of settings. Ignore this talent build here, just, yeah. So, number 1, Demonology, Felguard auto attack damage increased by 20%. And I believe I have a Felguard parse, or I guess hole, whatever, in here somewhere. Fine. I think it's this one here. It is indeed. So this is Kazara, the first boss in Aberrus. The damage breakdown looks like this. My Felguard's doing about 4.8%, 5% roughly, as far as raw melee damage is concerned. So a 20% increase to that. Answering the question of, does it affect Immutable Hatred, the second part of it, I don't believe so, because the second part, it says your primary Felguard deals extra damage. That is a separate damage event. That is literally this part here, Immutable Hatred. And the first part buffs Legion Strike, which is not part of, it's not auto attack damage, essentially. So I doubt it works with either of these two. If it does, great. It's probably just melee damage overall. We'll take it. It's passive, consistent damage increase. Not too bad. Number 2, Wild Imp damage increased by 20%. So Wild Imps have gotten a lot of buffs over the past month and a half or so. I believe a 15% buff roughly like a month ago, 20% here, and we've also gotten 20 more % here. So yeah, here. So a total of what, 55, 60-ish% to Wild Imps. That's pretty big. There's a few different things I want to mention here. Number 1, when it comes to damage breakdowns, this is my demo kill once again, or I guess pull. So Wild Imps are sitting right here. However, we were playing Decon here, and we were playing Immutable Hatred. So Hatred pushes your Felguard basically above Wild Imps. Without it, you can remove like 2.5% here, probably like 4 here. So it's sitting at like 12% below Wild Imps. From what I've seen in damage breakdowns playing GWD and Reign of Tyranny, the longer the fight goes, Wild Imps just begin to overtake everything else. Even Tyrant, even Dogs, in pure single target. Now, as far as AoE is concerned, Dogs will still be there, Implosion, all that. This buff does not affect Implosion damage. Implosion is based on something else. It's based on energy, and I assume a spell power modifier for Implosion itself, the spell. It does not increase Implosion damage, but it will indeed increase our passive, sustained, consistent, single target damage, or wherever Imp damage is relevant, right? So, good to see. It won't really have any changes to Reign of Tyranny. They still provide the same amount of value to it, but the one thing that it does change with this row is that it can possibly add more value to Grand Warlock's design, because more frequent Tyrants, more frequent Imp extensions, more frequent damage amps, Imps being out for longer, all that does indeed essentially add more value to these Wild Imp buffs. So I haven't seen Sims on GWD versus Reign of Tyranny with the change to Reign of Tyranny being in. It does seem pretty good, but this could indeed maybe push you back to playing GWD, at least playing it in certain spots, like Plus and things, where I played a bit of Reign of Tyranny in some dungeons. I really miss GWD. But at the same time, Reign feels pretty good in testing, and we get our 2-piece, having this sync with the Reign of Tyranny is going to feel pretty good. So, solid buff all around. Number 3, Vile Fiend damage, increased by 30%. So, Vile Fiend counts as a greater demon for Reign of Tyranny. I've been playing Vile Fiend in basically every Reign of Tyranny build. Basically every Reign of Tyranny build that I've been playing, unless it's a Mythic Plus. Any kind of single target raid encounter, I've been playing Vile Fiend, because number 1, they've increased the damage a lot over the past month and a half or so through multiple buffs. It's doing, I think, about 4.5% of my damage right now. Roughly, right around there, give or take. And it also adds essentially 3 points of value to Reign of Tyranny for 1 shard. It has a cast time, but I mean, so does Shadowbolt to build that shard back, and comparatively to an Imp that adds 1, it's a lot more Reign of Tyranny value, another large pet extension, all of that. It provides more value than an Imp would to Reign. It does more damage than an Imp would in general. So while it feels a bit awkward to play with, we're not huge fans of it. Most of us aren't. It feels like at least. Vile Fiend, nonetheless, does indeed look to be a pretty solid option for Reign of Tyranny builds, and maybe even GWD if you're playing it in a raid setting. I probably wouldn't play it in Plus, but it is there. They're certainly pushing Vile Fiend, and these buffs are all basically to Demo single target. While the imp damage doesn't really affect AoE, I mean, it doesn't. This doesn't really either, and neither does Vile Fiend. So they're certainly locking in on, hey, Demo's not doing as much damage as it should be in single target. Let's find ways to address that. And yeah, these are them. Once again, Demo still getting the bug from Demonic Separation. So there's that. Now finally we have Destruction. There's one buff, but it is to everything. And I don't know why, but at this point with Destro, your guess is as good as mine. I'm really not sure why they keep buffing it. I mean, I think I know why. It's because of Warcraft logs. If you pull up, well, I mean, if you end up pulling up statistics from Vaulted Incarnates, Destro is at the actual bottom, but that is not because of raw damage. Look back to the video I made a few weeks ago. Destro is one of, it probably is the highest swimming spec in the game now, after the additional incinerate buffs, and now after a 3% aura buff. This is a prime example of at times raid bosses, fights, encounters not being a good fit for a certain spec's damage profile. It is probably the highest swimming spec in the game right now. It is seeing the least play of any spec in the raid because of a poor damage, not really even a poor damage profile. There's one fight in the raid it's good on, one-ish, Kurog. It's okay on Sinarth, okay on Taros, but the problem with Destro was that it just can't move. I've said it for months, it just can't move. Its damage is very high, but it can't move. If you factor in, you know, heavy movement like on Taros and things, it's all right, but Aph's better. You can still sort of cheese movement here and there, but the fact of the matter is, if you're moving as Destro, you're casting Conflict Rate or you're not casting any spell. And Conflict Rate is not a spell I want to spam on the move and lose Roaring Blaze value in the first place, which is sort of minuscule, but this is testing here from our 2-target Shadow Flame Elemental's heroic kill on PTR 2 days ago. Destro is doing big damage, and if you wonder why, that is because pulling up the replay here if it works, basically there are 2 bosses. Might not work as PTR. I don't know if it'll work. Yeah, there are 2 bosses. They are, let's see here. Right here. Let's get rid of NPCs, players. Look where the Destros stand. In the middle. And we don't move for the entire fight. Unsurprisingly, we're at the top by a considerable margin. In this log, not that one. And that is because Destro is very stationary. So, I think it's sort of... I feel like Destro doesn't need more damage. I'll take it. It's fine. Maybe their solution to having no movement is just saying, hey, you hit so hard that when you move, it just sort of lets everybody else catch up to you. And otherwise, you just do more damage to everybody. I don't know. That's not the real explanation. I don't know, honestly. It doesn't really need more damage buffs. I'll take it. I'm not going to complain. An aura buff buffs everything in single target, in AoE, in 2-target, whatever you like in the spec. It's all been buffed. But I think Destro likely needs more targeted buffs. Yeah, not even buffs, targeted changes, as in some way to move, cast spells in the move, like maybe even like Incinerate, something along those lines. Madness duration increase could be okay, but it's a bit sketchy depending on what you're doing. You also have Channel Demon Fire being a part of our new 2-piece, 4-piece. Probably means a pretty big buff if it wants to be competitive. So we'll see where this goes. I'll take the buff. It's fine. But realistically, there have been 4 fights in this raid. 3 are patchwork. 1's mostly patchwork. And the other one is permanent. Well, it's 2-target cleave. And then when they converge into 1 add, it's patchwork. So whether you're playing Destro or not, Warlock has multiple damage profiles that fit this raid pretty well. And yeah. So TLDR, AF changes expected. I guess AF nerfs expected. Demo changes, pleasant surprise. Destro changes, I'll take it. And we'll go from there. I still expect AF to be good. Demo will be better, and Destro will be good on the fights where it's good. And yeah, so it was pretty easy to see through testing, like whether it was on my stream or anybody else's stream, and there are hundreds of streams streaming testing, or even people that aren't streaming through logs, that AFLock, every stream you pulled up, AFLock was number 1, number 2. And it's typically a multitude of AFLock. So that's surprising. It's better to get nerfed and targeted for tuning early on than later on, technically. And yeah, glass half full. Lock still looks good. They didn't destroy Affliction. it should now be more in line with everything else. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully that answered all the questions you might have had about the Destro, AF, and demo buffs, nerfs, all that stuff. And yeah, if it didn't, put it down below in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Like I said, I'm happy that Warlock's getting some attention early on. Like, AF nerfs, they're a bit unfortunate. They're totally expected. I didn't think we'd get them this early, but it's fine. It's cool seeing them still targeting demo single target for buffs, and we'll see where Destro goes. Who knows if larger class changes are still coming to talent trees. I'd be surprised and very disappointed if we have Grim Feast as a capstone again heading into 10.1, because at this point, you're not even playing ID as AF. It is a dead capstone. We basically have 2 in the class tree. So, I don't know. We shall see. But as always, weekly Warcraft add-ons, profiles, links down below to Twitch and Discord, but all for free for you guys. And as always, I want to give one final shout out to my patrons for in the video. As always, thank you for all the support, guys. I really appreciate it. Much love. Thank you. Links up here as well as down below if you're looking at supporting on Patreon. And once again, the 10.1 Warlock PTR spreadsheet will indeed be live in a week or two. Probably about 2-ish, give or take. The tier 3 Felgar rank or higher Patreon gets early access to that if you're interested. And yeah, so just day 2 of testing is concluded. We have 4 heroic bosses left, which are being tested next week. I believe they all are. I'll be doing it on stream, obviously. Lock looks pretty good. I looked over the fights this tier. Most of them look like pretty good lock fights, and I think a lot of that's because starting off in Vault, there were some specs that were a little awkward as far as lock specs were a bit undertuned as far as damage is concerned. Most casters were, but a lot of the fights, like, I mean, Taros, Sinarth, Brew Keeper, I'm sure there's another one in there somewhere too. It just didn't really fit lock specs incredibly well, but I feel like this raid, Aberrus does. So we'll see where it goes. With all that being said, thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, hit the like and sub buttons below. It helps out a ton, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.